this whole DEI programming. Hey y'all. DEI program in the Department of Education and what Trump and his current administration are trying to do. I don't know if y'all saw the memo that was put out. I made a video about this, but it essentially feels like it's constantly the government versus the people. Like, I don't feel like the people in government know what their job is. And when they do not feel like they get the desired outcome that they want, they threaten the people of the country. And let's be clear, before I even get into the memo and what the memo says about education and what they want to dismantle, they want to dismantle something that is already not sufficiently working for students and children. Like the Department of Education, for better or for worse, whether or not people, understand what the Department of Education does, whatever it is, kids and even adult learners are not achieving at the rate that they should be based on what the Department of Education is already doing. So for them to in any way threaten to take funding away from a system that we all buy that based on data, this is not theory or like someone's prediction. Based on data, with the funding that they're already getting, they're not able to effectively serve the people that they have been created to serve, right? And so the idea, everything about the memo and the threat is backwards and contradictory because they're literally saying that they are going to take away funding from from the Department of Education because they want to make education a better place for certain kids of certain racial demographics. Like and they quote in the memo that they sent out. They quote that kids of white and Asian races have been disproportionately impacted in ways by DEI programming, which is actually not true. And in the memo, they talk about certain kids having to, or certain people of certain races having to hold the moral weight or the have this moral weight put on them that other people of other races don't have to carry, which makes no sense. And then they say that it's not that for that reason, they're not able to be successful in school. Let me actually read it to you because I want to like clearly state what it says. But it says that other programs discriminate in less direct but equally insidious ways. DI programs, for example, frequently preference certain racial groups and teach students that certain racial groups bear unique moral burdens that others do not. Such programs stigmatize students who belong to particular racial groups and based on cruel and racial stereotypes. Consequently, they deny students the ability to participate fully in the life of a school. So essentially, what they're saying is that certain programs like DI programs that teach true history, that white people have created racism and marginalized and have been aggressive and harmful to people, they're saying that it's too hard for those students to learn that and have to bear that like that moral the bear the weight of the morality and also have to live with that racial stereotype. Like they are saying that white kids are being racially stereotyped. I just want to be clear that instead of facing the truth or the reality of what history is in America, you want to dismantle an entire system because you feel like white kids are being racially stereotyped. I also want to be clear that black kids, black boys, black girls, black people communities and education. Now, all of a sudden, you need to undo the system. Imagine you can't succeed in a system that you designed, that was designed for and by you. You're not succeeding. And because of that, now other people need to bear the burden because you're seeing certain groups and certain demographics be able to outdo the system. Essentially, we found cheat codes to be able to succeed. We had to work twice as hard to get to where we want to be. And because you see that black people, and I truly believe that this is also this is directly related to the fact that a black woman who graduated from an HBCU was running against him for presidency, and he didn't like that. I truly believe that. He felt like this black woman was giving him a run for his money, and they saw black people are making strides, and they said, we need to start doing something to push them backwards. Because at this point, doesn't matter how much success or access we have, it doesn't matter how much privilege we have, we still need more privilege because they're getting too close. They're getting too close. Kamala, a black woman was able to run for presidency. That means that this has gone too far. So what do? We need to dismantle any systems that could work in the advantage of black and brown people. That's what they did, because black and brown people have found out how to navigate the system, even though it was designed for them to fail. We have been able to we are making strides and being able to uproot a problematic system and still succeed when it's not designed for us. That means that the game is not hard enough. That means that the game is not. It doesn't mean that white folks need to work harder. It means that we need to make the game harder for black and brown children, because at this point, they're catching us. They're catching us. And yes, Obama was president, but there's a difference between a black man running for office, who, by the way, is biracial, whether or not that matters, and a black woman, just to be clear, a black woman running for presidency. She was too smart for them. She was too smart for them. She was too smart for them. Kamala Harris is not biracial. She is black. Both black parents. I understand that there's a disconnect between what people understand West Indian means. West Indian is not Indian. She's not biracial. She doesn't have a white parent. Please. She is black. Black and educated. Let's not change the narrative and question this black woman's blackness. She is black through and through. She even took people on a journey to her Jamaican heritage, to her family, so that they can be clear. She is a black woman. She is not biracial. And so and this is the problem. People will pick apart this woman's identity and still try to move the needle. She did not win. And this is the problem. People are trying to find ways to discredit black people in any way. When black people are able to dismantle a system or to get above, they are literally finding ways to try to perpetuate negative and false narratives to make themselves feel better. She's not biracial. And this is the problem. This is the problem. Black people are making too many strides in America, and they want to see black people move backwards. And the truth of the matter is, they can dismantle DEI programs. The education system was still rigged for black people not to win. DEI or not. I don't know if y'all noticed, but a lot of us as kids, there was no DEI programs when we were growing up. And we're still sitting in front of you. We're still sitting in front of you. We're still thriving. I'm an executive at an educational institution. Let's be clear, at the district level. It's always been rigged. There was no DEI when we were growing up. There was none. But the problem is that we're not saying the quiet part out loud. We're not. The problem is that they want to make it easier for white people to access privilege and be successful in educational spaces instead of forcing them to challenge themselves to do better. That's the T. The question is not whether or not we can do it. We've done it. The question is not whether or not we can survive in racist spaces. We've done it. We've done it. That's our history. This presidency, this racist president, a president that don't like black people is not new to us. We have survived it for years and years and years. That's just not how it works. But they want to move the goalposts for mediocrity for white people, especially white men. Because white men have all the privilege in the world and they still can't do what they got to do to be successful. And now they're finding themselves battling and fighting with black people in spaces where black people are successful and they don't like it. They're having to fight for their spots instead of being placed in the seat. The white men are upset because they feel like they shouldn't have to do anything to get in the seat. They feel like they should show up and it should be given to them. Thus, they're writing memos saying that a moral burden is being placed on. How is it a moral burden for kids to understand the truth about their history and what their ancestors did? What moral burden? They're not even being asked hell he is to be over our education system in America. I want to be clear. It's a certain kind of white people. It is all white people who have done nothing to become successful. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Linda McMahon, all of these people have done absolutely nothing to be successful. They've been handed everything. And they're sitting in a room crying together about how hard life is for white folks. Do you hear how ridiculous that sounds? Do you hear how ridiculous that sounds? A group of privileged white people running a country, sitting in a room talking about how hard it is for white people in America. That sounds insane. The thought of that, I want you to picture it. A bunch of white people who have been given everything, literally handed on a silver platter. You were a reality show TV star and became the president. Every single president before you, whether or not they suck, had to work harder to get in the seat that they're in. You, a reality star who was handed millions of dollars, sitting around a table with Elon Musk, who's not even from America, and Linda McMahon talking about how hard it is for white folks in America because they have to learn about the truth about their history. It sounds so insane to me. It sounds so insane. And then to try to reverse uno what DEI actually means, to try to change the definition of what DEI has been designed to be is insane. Trying to move the goalpost and rewrite a definition so that you don't have to face your own historical burdens, so that you don't have to understand how this system is messed up. Instead of trying to investigate, instead of doing the work, collecting data, trying to figure out the actual evidence, find evidence in the broken system. And your answer to that is that if you don't do this thing, I am going to take away federal funding that schools already don't have enough of. Every day, teachers are complaining about kids reading at a third grade level in high school. Every day. And your theory on this is that I could save money if we get rid of the Department of Education and threaten to take away funding to hold kids. You're holding kids hostage. And that's what's really tea. You are trying to hold kids hostage. Like these are people that kids. It's not adults that you're messing with. These are kids. You're playing a pawn game with the education of kids. So when we see that kids are still only reading at a third grade level and they're in the 12th grade, then what? You're threatening to take away funding from kids? I say this all the time, and I will continue to say it. The people that this country cares the least about are the most vulnerable populations, children and the elderly, and people with disabilities. Those three populations are the most, they get the most lack of care. Literally, children, elderly, and people with disabilities who need support to be successful. They literally don't care about them. They really could, they want to disregard them. And that, if that wasn't made clear when that man got up there and said a plane crashed because of DEI hires, I just like, and the thing is that what they're also not anticipating is that Black and brown children are not going to be the only ones who are impacted by the moves that they're making. So when you hear me speak, be crystal clear that yes, I'm speaking about Black and brown children because I have a Black child and I'm a Black man. Okay, and the reason I entered education was for Black children. I want to make that crystal clear. But I also love all kids. I also feel like we have a moral obligation as adults to do what is right for children. And white kids are also going to be very much impacted by this. Kids who are diverse learners are going to be impacted by this. Let's keep it a funky stack. You know what I'm saying? Like, white kids are going to be impacted by this. Kids in general who are diverse learners who have IEPs are going to be impacted. And let's be clear, the person in the chat that is saying a racist teacher that tracks, you should also be worried because you're clearly going to be impacted by it, and so will your kids because you can't keep up. That tracks. So back to the topic, because y'all know I'm gonna get off topic. They're literally impacting all kids. You are taking funding out of kids' mouths. Okay. That's what it comes down to. Because when they get rid of this funding, the funding is going to go for it. There's no funding. There's no funding that specifically says this is for black kids. That doesn't work that way. That doesn't work that way. Especially when it comes to funding that is given to SPED programs. It doesn't work that way. The SPED programs, the funding that is given to special education, I'm telling you this as somebody who was an administrator in a school for years. The way that funding works, it doesn't say the funding that we give you for this specific program is only allowed to support black children. It doesn't say that. There's no addendum. And when we get that funding, when we receive the funding and we apply for it and they show us the regulations, nowhere in it does it say that you can only use this funding for black children. There's no clause. It is for that when education institutions receive funding for special education, it is for all kids who are diverse learners, and you are expected to engage all kids who are diverse learners with said funding. So while they're trying to take away this funding to specifically target certain kids because you want to make white children feel better, you don't even realize that your child is receiving that funding. That same child that got ADHD and that white child that's getting the accommodations, that's federal funding. That's the funding. That's the funding. Them white children whose parents been got them accommodations, time and a half, all of that because they know how to use the system, that's federal funding. Okay. But you see, when you only understand DEI to be a white versus black issue, because that's what it's come down to. It has come down to the fact that people only can interpret DEI as black and white. That is what people understand of DEI, is black versus white. And that's where your misunderstanding comes from. You get what I'm saying? And that's what happens when you don't understand equality versus equity. You are trying to find a way to create equality, which means everyone gets the same thing. But equity, that's when equity says that everybody gets what they need, that includes all people. That's the point of using the word equity instead of equality, is that it's creating a system that services people based on what they need. Every kid shouldn't get the same thing. That's the problem with the actual education system from the beginning, is that the way it was established was that they believe that every child should get the same thing. If you're a parent to a child or have ever taught in an institution, regardless of the child's race, every child learns differently. Some children learn better through auditory learning. Some children work better when they write. Some children are visual learners. Some children work better when they can get up and move around the classroom. Those accommodations, those extra teachers that are being put in the classroom to support your child being able to do that, guess where it comes from? Federal funding. Whether your child is white, black, purple, orange, gray, whatever it is. Your child being able to get up and take that break with that other teacher in the classroom, your child being in a co-taught class, where do you think it comes from? There's no funding that's given. And I'm telling you as someone who has to look at the funding, decide where the funding goes. Special education is under me at my job. So I'm not talking out of my behind. I'm talking from a space where I understand how it works. Also, your children that receive mental health services and social work and mandated counseling, that mandated counseling gonna stop. So when little Susie is feeling like she doesn't feel safe and don't want to live, and they snatched that IEP up because they took away the federal funding, little Susie can't go to that guidance counselor no more because there will be no funding for that. Schools will have to figure out how to provide their own mental health services outside of mandated requirements. Speech therapy, occupational therapy. And let's be clear that white children, though black and brown children are the most represented in special education programming, white children access those programs the easiest. Speech, occupational therapy, all of those things, they get it sooner. But guess what? That's that funding. So why y'all think y'all are putting black people in a situation, it's not about black people. And this is the problem. Certain people are only invested in their own identity. You're not invested in the betterment of the entire society and our nation. Because if you were, you'd understand that this is about marginalized groups getting what they need to be successful. And you don't understand privilege. You don't understand people being able-bodied versus not able-bodied or having disabilities. You don't understand that. And when you don't get it, you think very linearly. And I would argue that some of this federal funding should have been around when these people were kids because they need it. And I'm not being funny. That's as someone who needed it as a kid. Them people that sit in that office, it's unfortunate that there were no such things. There wasn't federal funding around for those people because they needed it. They needed it. And that's the sad reality. And because they don't get what they need, they're up there making decisions. The difference between them and us is that even though they needed it, they're white. So they were still able to get to where they are because they're white. Donald Trump has made it very clear that he is not intellectually advanced. He's in his running for presidency, it's been made crystal clear to us that he is not the most intelligent person in the world. He needed it. So the fact that you want to dismantle it, we would be in a different situation if our generations had the same level of funding. We wouldn't be trying to undo the backwards ass learning that kids are getting. We wouldn't be trying to fight against learning deficits if that funding was available when our generations were younger. It's that simple. And Elon Musk can't talk to us about the education in America. He's not from here. Y'all got somebody from a completely different continent wanting to talk about the education system when you haven't experienced the educational system. And I can't, these are the things you cannot make up. These are the things that you cannot make up. And while white folks are sitting there cheering on Donald Trump, because the majority of the white folks who actually voted for Donald Trump live in the backwoods of America. Let's be clear. Them white folks, their kids are not getting the services that they need because they're also not available. But they don't know that. They don't know that. They can't figure it out why they can't make it out of the backwoods of Texas or West Virginia. They can't figure it out. They can't figure it out. Those kids, them people that voted, y'all, that the little bit of funding they get to support their kids who have learning deficits, snatched. And then what do you do? Who do you blame at that point? Because you cheered this man on, you rallied behind him and got him in office, and now he is taking away federal funding for any kid who is a diverse learner. Okay, I want to be clear. Because while y'all think that this man isn't, because the truth of the loud part that everyone is saying, the quiet part that everyone needs to be saying out loud is that the truth of the matter is y'all voted for him because you're white, he's white, and he said a bunch of things about white people. Okay. Now let's see, because he doesn't care about you whether you white. His bottom line is money. His bottom line is keeping white men in power. He's not stupid. He's dumb, but he ain't stupid. So what he's doing is trying to gaslight people into believing that these DEI programs are the reason that white men have such a hard time because they're being discriminated against. I want you to hear that. White men have the most privilege in America, probably in the world. In the world. And that's over even white women. Okay? Let's be crystal clear. And with all the privilege that they have, they're still not feeling like they're given a fair shot. They still don't feel like they have the vantage point as a white man in America. How can we sit back and listen to a white man like Donald Trump tell us about hard work? He's a white man in America who comes from a rich family at that. So not only do you get privilege by way of just being a white man, you were born a white man, you were born privileged. You were given that right to have privilege when you were born. And then you come from a rich family. And that's still not enough? That's still not enough? Yeah, something ain't right. The math is not mathing. The math is not mathing. And so now some of our most vulnerable populations, children, specifically children with disabilities, will be at even more of a disadvantage now because they don't understand, because they lack the knowledge and understanding to understand the nuances of the education system. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying that the Department of Education is good. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that the Department of Education got it right. But what I am saying is that you're trying to make it even more wrong. You're trying to break an already broken system. You are trying to literally run the system into the ground. The system is already broken, specifically for people of marginalized groups. It is disproportionately negatively impacting kids in marginalized groups. It is broken. It is a shit system, and I'm saying that as someone who works in the system. It's already messed up, and you're trying to make it worse. Oh, and forget about the people in education. I'm not a teacher. I understand my positionality as an administrator and as a leader within schools. Do you know how hard it is for teachers now to engage kids in curriculum? Do you know how much harder it has become since the pandemic for teachers to actually teach kids? Studies have shown that kids, because of the pandemic and because of their access to social media, have a 12-second attention span. Anything more than an average of 12 seconds is hard for kids to engage in. Teachers are having to do tricks, jump backwards, find different ways to engage with kids, do backflips in the front of a room, do leaps and bounds to help kids access, figure out how to use technology, figure out how to use social media, figure out how to get kids to stay focused for more than 15 seconds. And y'all are taking away funding when teachers don't even get paid enough. And be clear that most of the funding is not even going to teachers. Teachers are, I'm telling you this as someone who works in education, and I'm seeing, and there are some teachers who are just not good teachers, but I see the hard work of teachers who are doing backflips out this mother lover. They pulling out all the tricks. They going to work every day, going home crying. Educators are struggling with substance use because it is so hard to be a teacher, and you don't get paid nearly enough. And not only do you have to be a teacher, but now you got to be a teacher, a social worker, social emotional teacher. You have to deal with kids who are coming to school hungry. You got to be a parent. They wearing 50 hats. And you still trying to take away funding. I'm talking they're doing everything to get kids to try to engage in curriculum. Teachers are being evaluated against their ability to get kids to engage in curriculum. And you still want to take away funding? They're the most underpaid, one of the most underpaid careers and people are still becoming educators. Even with the limited amount of pay, even with the hard hours, the long days and nights, having to take work home, having to stop lessons to deal with kids' trauma, taking home the trauma, having to go home to their own families, they're still some of the most lowest paid occupations in our country. But let them tell it, without teachers, they wouldn't be sitting in the seats that they were sitting in. And people are still going into the field, and you want to cut funding. There's a shortage for teachers in America right now. Teachers do not want to be in the classroom. There is a shortage. There is even more of a shortage of teachers that look like me. There is even more of a shortage of Black and brown teachers. They have had to find and create programs to engage more Black and brown teachers because studies have shown that Black and brown kids are more successful when they have educators that look like them. There is a teacher shortage in America. It is a national problem. Just so we're clear, it is a national issue. I don't know anyone who works in education that is not struggling to find qualified, dedicated teachers that want to be in the classroom. And you're going to cut funding to make it harder to be a teacher. You're going to cut funding to make it harder. You're going to cut funding that will impact students' abilities to learn, students who are exceptional learners and learn differently. You're going to take away funding that supports teachers' abilities to support them in the classroom. Because that additional teacher, those co-taught classrooms with more than one teachers, guess what? That's a part of a special education program. It's per pupil billing for kids who are in special education. Schools bill for that. They have to use that money to hire that teacher who has the specialization in special education and to make sure that the classroom has more than one teacher in it. Because a teacher trying to teach 30 kids by themselves in an integrated class with children who are exceptional learners and have additional needs is impossible. It is impossible. I'm not saying it's hard. I'm telling you that having one teacher in a classroom with 30 kids and half to about 8 of those kids have different learning styles and need additional support, it is impossible. Impossible. I just so we're clear, and this is what's not registering for folks. This is what's not registering for folks. And you already don't have enough people who want to do it because it's too hard. I am burnt out from education as a leader. As a leader, I'm not even in the classroom. As a leader, I'm burnt out from education. Do you know how these people in the classrooms are feeling? And I'm guilty of this. And then I still need kids to thrive. So I still need you to meet the standard. I still need you to get kids there. I still need you to figure out how to get them to learn. I still need you to get them off that third grade reading level because too many kids in your classroom is reading at a third grade level. It's still an expectation. And you want to cut funding. I'm telling you, because I do it. I have to go in classrooms and say, this child is not learning because their head is down. This one got in headphones. That one is talking. This one, and teachers are being rated against that. And it is still difficult with two. In co-taught classes with more than one educator, one of them who typically specializes in education is specifically trained to do that, it is still really hard. Okay. And this is what breaks my heart. And I'm so passionate about this because I've seen the obstacles. I work in the obstacles. You have to get creative. Y'all don't understand that kids don't want to sit down in a classroom. These kids don't even want to come to school. Kids don't even want to come to school. The attendance rate is in hell. It is in hell. Schools are having to do initiatives and incentives to even get kids in the building. Kids are struggling from deep depression and anxiety that was never resolved and started way before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, they don't want to come to school because they're sad. And you want to cut funding that pays for additional school counselors? These kids don't want to live. You know what I'm saying? And you want to cut funding? It's deplorable. It's deplorable. I'm watching teachers having to do home visits. I'm watching teachers having to figure out how to talk to kids, how to engage with kids, how to make them feel safe. Most of teaching nowadays is how you make kids feel safe in a classroom. Because if kids don't feel safe, they don't learn. Do you know how much work that takes? I want to put some of these people in a classroom for a day and tell them to teach kids effectively and get them off a third grade reading level. Before you pull the funding, let me put your ass in a classroom with kids who are struggling to be there. And I want you to figure out with your policies, just you by yourself as a teacher, wanting to cut funding and wanting to cut DEI pro, I want you to engage kids without showing them themselves in the curriculum. I want you to engage kids by continuing to have them read books like Moby Dick. reading books like The Outsiders. I want you to go in a classroom with that curriculum that you so desperately want to hold on to and teach. You're also asking people to undo years of curriculum writing. You're asking people to you said they have 2 weeks. You want people to do years of undo. You want them to undo entire curriculum in 2 weeks. You have to think. It takes years to write effective curriculum that meets standards, that are aligned to standards. It takes years. 2 weeks? 2 weeks? You want colleges to undo entire policies that have been vetted by lawyers, written out, and put in place in a system, like in a way that is codified and systematic. You want them to undo it in 2 weeks, or they risk losing funding. Who gonna teach the kids? If they got 2 weeks to get that done, who gonna teach the kids? Because if with 2 weeks to do that, you need every single person that works inside of an education system to be able to do that. In order to make that work in 2 weeks, there will be nobody teaching the kids. Because you need everyone that works within a system to be able to do that. And this is what I'm saying. These are the people that want to be lawmakers. They don't know how policy even works. They don't know how policy and practices work. They don't understand how systems work. They don't. They're leaning on privilege. They're leaning on privilege. Literally. Y'all not, and they're not even teaching kids the right things that they should be teaching them in schools to be successful. And the truth of the matter is that they want to create more laborers. That's the other thing. If we're being clear, they want more kids to be in the labor field. A lot of kids are realizing now that they can be entrepreneurs and do things their way. People like Donald Trump and Elon Musk need people to work for them. They need laborers. That's why one of the first things that he said is that he wants to get rid of daylight saving time, because they want to make the day longer, the work day longer. More sunlight increases productivity. Their bottom line is money. If too many people go out and become business owners and entrepreneurs and are financially literate and can handle whatever and work with their money effectively and don't have to clock into a clock, who's going to do the labor for their workload? Yeah, they don't want people to be, the people are becoming too educated. And they need upcoming laborers. People don't want to be in the workforce anymore. People are realizing that they don't have to do the same thing that our parents and grandparents had to do. And so what does that mean for people like that? They need to create more spaces for kids to become laborers. That's what they want. They want more people that can get in the field and do their hard work. So they want to take away funding from these systems that have essentially, and let's be clear, the system is still ass. The system still sucks. But it's doing enough to get a certain group, and it's a very small group of children, to be able to see themselves outside of being a 9-to-5 slave. It's just enough. Because most kids are not leaning into entrepreneurship. They don't know how. They don't have the same level of access. It's a very small percentage. They're seeing there is a rise in kids finding out that there's other ways. I can make content. I can own a business. I can sell things. I can work for myself. I sat on a panel the other day to talk to kids at a high school that I used to work at. I sat on a panel the other day to talk to them about why becoming an entrepreneur is important and how what it feels like to be able to be an entrepreneur and working for yourselves. Their jaws were on the floor because they couldn't believe that it was feasible or possible. They don't want that. They want kids to get in the work field. They want kids to be a slave to the government. They're literally trying to create little worker bees and force kids to be used as free labor or used as cheap labor. What does that sound like to you? What does that sound like to you? They want to find ways to turn these kids into future cheap labor. What does that sound like to you? I hope you said slavery. Ding, ding, ding. Slavery. Slavery. Call a spade a spade. Call a spade a spade. It's slavery. They want to find ways to get cheap labor out of people. And right now, it is too costly because they're having to spend too much money on technology. Okay. That's all that's it. And guess what? They don't give a damn about the race of your child either. They want all of these kids to turn. They want cheap labor from everybody. Because their bottom line is not people. It is not a group of people. It is to keep the rich richer and the poor poorer. It is to keep the poor working for the rich class. Okay. Because too many people think this is just a black and white thing. Just so we're clear. It's too many white folks that's out here like, yeah, bring them down, blah, 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 like, let's whatever. Y'all don't realize they don't mess with you either. If you're not rich, you don't count. They want y'all to do cheap labor as well. They want white folks to do cheap labor as well. This is about power and privilege. Okay. I'm just saying. It's unfortunately that it impacts black and brown people more. It's disappointing and it sucks. But I can't wait for folks to see that if you're not of a certain class, yes, you'll still have privilege. Yes, they'll still make you feel good about yourself because you're white. But if you don't have that money, if that money ain't hitting, if them chicken pieces ain't hitting, oh, you not one of them neither. It's okay, because that's how, this is how groups of people learn. So all those people who are walking around screaming, white power, make America great again. Poor people in America have never been great. Sorry to tell you. Like, I don't know if you know, but poor people in America have never been great. Never. So while y'all are, yeah, to the white power, okay. And just make sure that when that white power fail you, that you don't hit spin a block on DEI. Okay. I want to be clear, because they don't care about the poor. This country has never cared about the poor. Ever. But okay. That's tea. So the way that, listen, y'all got me on my high horse, and y'all know I could go on for years and years about this. What I want to say is, I really need everyone to start calling their local legislative branches, start to talk to the politics in the spaces where you occupy, where you live, start reaching out to the government, start making those phone calls, start putting your foot on a government's neck, start sending letters, start going to vote in local elections. The presidential election is not enough. Go vote for local politicians who are going to fight against the president and the presidential administration. I'm glad this was therapeutic. Go and exercise your voice. Go to community board meetings. Hell, show up at your school's community board meeting. Your kids' schools. You know what I'm saying? Call and don't stop calling. 3 phone calls a day. 3 phone calls a day. It don't take nothing but 3. Put pressure on them and stop investing in white spaces for rich white folks. Stop buying things from these big companies that are going to who are a part of this scheme to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. That is how we keep our foot on their neck. It's about the money. When you stop the money, when that money stop coming, they gonna hear you. When them checks stop hitting, they gonna hear you. Okay? Shop local. Stop. When that money stop coming, they gonna listen. Put your foot on their neck. Anyway, I love y'all. I gotta hop off. Appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all follow my YouTube and my Spotify. for the podcast, but also for YouTube. If you miss any of my lives, I'm going to be posting them on there. I got to hop off. I got to check on my kid. I got to make dinner. So I love y'all. Make sure y'all out there advocating. Don't let nobody stifle your voices. Don't let nobody make you feel small. Every voice counts. Get out there and do something. Please, 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 because these people are bugging and thugging. Love y'all and be safe.